Let's talk herd. Hi, Joe. Hi, Sabina. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So I was with the horses earlier because I'm kind of getting into the habit of doing that now. Just when they're, I think things always come into my mind. It feels good to just ask them if there's something they want to share or something, it just feels like their perception a little bit, like allowing it to come through. So nothing really came for a while, and then I got this, it was quite clear. This, just the idea of when horses are shut down, or what we call shut down. So when they have that particular lack of personality or that maybe wall or defensiveness, and it's so easy when you're communicating with them because you don't have words, so it's like trying to put it into words, but you know what I mean, that when there's that energy around them, and what they were intimating was we could maybe as humans look back at this again, or look on it with fresh eyes and a fresh. So it's not, they weren't really saying that we have misinterpreted that, but they're saying that there's maybe some more depth for us. And so I was thinking of it, I kind of went a bit intellectual, and I was thinking of it in terms of, maybe it means something different. But that's not really, maybe we need to think of it in them in a different way. But then they kind of brought me back to understanding that it's about what they would like us to look at is how it makes us feel when we perceive that in them. So go inside yourself and feel what you feel when we appear to you in this way. So I did that, but I want to ask you if you would like to kind of go first as such, like if anything comes up, because I don't want to just overlay what I felt. If there's something in that for you to consider, and I know you have to consider it kind of fast.
Could we pause the recording or edit out a moment so we could sit in silence and feel that? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So could we I just would like to, sit in silence and feel that. Because that's a beautiful.
Absolutely. Or just shorten it down a bit, because maybe others would like to do the same. So yeah.
So for me, when I explore that, I just noticed that there are two ways that I can be present with a being, whether it's a horse or a human, that is feeling like their energy system might be shut down. And one is not to label it at all. No, not to label it at all. And how a lot of my own evolution life was around how another being, if another being opens in my presence, then I'm good. Then I'm trustworthy. But if the other being doesn't open, then I need to do something to prove that I'm trustworthy, to manipulate them to be a certain way, to make me feel better. But if I don't label this way of an energetic arrangement of a being that I'm interacting with, then what I'm actually seeing is that it may not even be shut down. It may simply be an invitation to meet in a place that's beyond exuberant expression, and to go and to hold that feel of a neutrality without interpretation with that being changes it completely. So that's what my experience was.
Yeah, just feel that so deeply as an energy, as an engagement with the horse in that moment. How vulnerable you can be, and how receptive. So in a way, it's not really about the horse at all. How did you feel, Jo? Did you get an impression?
I got an impression of excitement and important movement. So important in the sense that of this excitement and things evolving, and at the same time I could feel how small I was. And it's like the horses are there looking after me because they understand my limitations. They see it and they see my part, and it's like they can understand that for me sometimes the movement can be scary, and that maybe I try to get a handle on it through describing it or knowing what to do, knowing how to put a label on it, so many things, because this movement is so big and so wonderful and vast. And I felt them looking at me and saying, "Isn't this wonderful? And don't worry, because we are here and we are anchored, and you just need to be and hold on to us." Just need to be. So you don't need to try.
Do you feel that in that there's a differentiation in the horse's energy? As in, would you see or feel a difference in how they express themselves? If they were, how we would label them, shut down or defended or,
The movement that I felt was beyond categories and words. So, yeah, I'm not sure that they see themselves as shut down or defended. They seem to see everything and just know. They just know where they're at and where they're going. So it's coming back to that movement that it's funny because when we say things like shut down, it's almost like something should be happening, but it's not. And it's like the horse doesn't see that at all, because in his state, he is moving and he is communicating and he is participating in that perfect moment of what all is happening. He doesn't feel the same point of view as we do, as having to make an effort to change.
Yeah, it's almost like it's our perception that is so similar to something I was talking about on the last podcast I did, which I haven't put on yet, but the horses said to me, this is their kind of message at the beginning was, because I was talking to two people who were healers or in different ways, and they said, if your perception was healed, how would healing be then? And it was just so clear, that is healing, how we perceive, in a sense. Like when you see the truth in another being, that true inner light, then there's nothing to heal.
Yeah.
And I think we're all sort of somewhere along the way to that.
Sometimes when we talk about healing, it's because we want to move away from what is. And what I felt there just now with the horses was there is no need to desire to change or to heal, because the movement is already in place and like a big river or something. And so that movement, we're just invited to witness it and to take a lot of joy in it. So, sometimes when we talk about healing, there is this association that the current state is not what it should be, and so we should be looking for something better or different.
Yeah.
Which the horses, they just don't share that way of looking at things.
No. Yeah, I had this realization the other day that sense of enough, like being enough or having enough, is the same as expansion. And that's kind of what we're seeking, is that expansion. I think sometimes the confusion is that the enough is the sense of filling up. So you are expanding, so there is a movement involved in it. It's not like feeling too full after a meal, It's like it's like a dynamic that we're searching for. So that's why maybe we look outside of ourselves for more possessions and more things. And then when we have them, it's not what we were looking for because it's static. So it's kind of just this being able to allow that flow to be constantly filling us up.
Yeah. And not to always try to understand it or control it or even anticipate it, because it's a gift. And it's a gift that we're born into. And so our participation and our place in it is completely open and free.
Yeah, it's kind of who we are. When I asked myself that question, how do I feel when? And it's interesting because I haven't been in that situation for a while where I've made that judgment with a horse. And I'm not sure if that's because I haven't been around a horse that, could be classified in that way, or just because my perception has changed. But what I felt what came into my mind was that in that situation, in that moment, there's a choice. It's quite similar to what you were saying, Sabina, but maybe slightly more intellectual, in that I was thinking that would be an opportunity to make a choice to either listen to the horse and accept what they are, where they are, where they're feeling, or to just override how they are. And I kind of saw that state of being in them is maybe their way of being true to themselves. And because it seems quite silent and subtle and almost submissive in a way, if you think about the way that people can often treat horses. And they don't fight, they don't fight like a predator would. Difficult circumstances. So it feels like that's their way of just being who they are, and that you can, it's almost like they're offering us an opportunity to be receptive to them and to listen and to, it's quite
like an open invitation, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is, very much.
With somebody who would be categorized as being shut down. I used to overcompensate for her to try to make her be more socially acceptable in the flow.
Yeah.
And in the first 10 years of our relationship, I would interpret her withdrawal as shut down, and as it was so uncomfortable because I couldn't feel her interacting. But it was her Alani refusal to engage in any kind of surface known behavior. And it was an open invitation to meet deeper. And so I've had some boot camp with a human. And
Yes.
of course, the horses,
Yes.
they are fields of sentient stillness, just like we are. I mean, once we had someone come and visit us, and Alani just sat there with her eyes closed during the whole conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they were coming to meet us
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
and sit in our living room with tea. And she sat there with her eyes closed.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So one thing came to me about what I just shared, which, might not come through the recording, which is fine. But the reason why I would try to overcompensate for this, my partner's, what would be perhaps perceived as shutdownness in a social setting, was because I could feel the other person's discomfort in not having signs of validation.
Yes. Absolutely.
You see, right?
Yeah.
So when a horse is shut down in our presence, there's nothing to go by on the external, like, are we okay? Do you like me? Am I?
Absolutely.
Yes. And I had to learn how to become comfortable if the person was reaching out for validation but not receiving it, that I didn't need to offer that to that person, that we could all still just meet in this field of this, something deeper perhaps.
Yeah, that's a really powerful. It's almost like if you can do that, the situation is able to stretch and change in some way that you don't allow if you're trying to. I mean, I think I would be drawn to do that as well, to try and pacify and just keep everything balanced.
And it is exactly along the lines of what we're talking about, that discomfort that we can feel in witnessing something. And the message that was being brought to me was, in the first case, my question was, well, why is it so hard for me just to witness? Why do I feel this need to somehow change something or make it better, or it reminded me of a car I drove recently. It's one of these fancy new cars where if you cross the white line in the middle of the road, if you're not paying attention, the steering wheel vibrates. And nobody warned me that that was going to happen. Suddenly my whole body was vibrating. And it came to me yesterday that that's how I can feel sometimes in situations especially with people, when I'm observing and feeling and listening. And I can feel when something in their being crosses that line and is taking them away from themselves. And my desire today is to be able to completely welcome that observation without feeling discomfort, but just to welcome it and say, yes, this is perfectly happening around me and I'm invited to watch it.
Yes. And be like the horses who just hold that. It's like they just keep that balance, don't they?
Yeah. What I felt when they said to me that they were like this anchor for me, because they understand how at the moment movement is still difficult for me. They understand that I still have these moments where I freak out. What do I do? What do I do? No, nothing. Just go with it, Joe. And they're so kind. They're so kind in their attitude.
And when you talk about movement, is that on all levels? Or do you mean the flow in the moment? Or are you talking about their physical power, or all of it?
It's kind of all of it, because that movement is the freedom of being and of source. And I have another example. Yesterday I took a little girl on a horse ride.
Wow.
So I was with a second horse in front and she was on the big baby behind. And we decided to stop to let them eat. And the big baby wanted to take a few steps into the field. And he had to go across the ditch. And I could see that the natural inclination of this girl, she's 11, was to guide the horse and to show him where he should go. And I said to her, why don't you just let everything go? Let him go where he wants and just be like in that hoarseness with him. And you don't always have to guide and you don't always have to know. And you can literally just feel him moving.
Wow, what an
Listen
opportunity.
to the birds. Feel him eating. And just really feel all that and just let everything else go. And so that's the movement I'm talking about. Is it can be physical, emotional, everything really is. Are we able to trust? Trust.
Yeah. And that gave me the sudden thought that maybe that is partly, or it can be a reason why they go into or they express that state of what we would call frozen watchfulness or something like that, because they feel that we can't move with them. So it's like, how do we not threaten this human? It kind of reminds me of what people say about aliens. They don't want to scare people, so they can't just sort of appear. You have to. And so horses, maybe they feel that. And it reminds me of something Emily said as well, that when she first sat on this mare, that she was this older mare who wanted to go out of the herd and gallop. But when she first sat on her, it was like she was frozen in place. And I experienced that as well with Karamba. And I think it's more about us and like what they feel we're capable of. Like until we're able to be in a place where we don't have to control and where we're not fearful, then they just wait, and they're waiting. We construe as this frozen or shut down, or
maybe it's actually really awakened to a level that they're not conscious.
Yeah, they're sensitive to us and they're protecting us, or just being with that state of not readiness, or And I think it's quite a common human state, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of how we spend a lot of our time. Being unable to move like that, unable to flow like that.
Trying to force particular movements and deny other ones.
Being separate from flow itself.
Mm.
We are
Exactly.
flow. We're not separate from flow. We are flow. We have to enter into, like move out of the way, like you told that little girl. Enter into flow, become flow. That's who you are. That's who this being under you is. One flow of life, not separate.
Don't resist the flow.
Don't resist who you truly are.
It reminds me of this morning I was doing a healing, I'll just call it that, session for someone. And they were damaged quite severely by the vaccine and the recent one. And I won't name it because it causes problems. But so we've been going through so many layers with this, and it's really powerful, but it's almost like it had crystallized into this molecular discrepancy. And I'm not sure if it was DNA or if it was a protein. It didn't really matter. It was just how this vaccine damage was like expressing itself. And I just had the thought, I'm just going to take this to the phenomenal tree and see what, because I felt like when I was holding a space for it, it was kind of unwinding, but it was also felt like it was also expanding, and it just felt very complicated. So I just thought that's what I'm going to do. So I went to see the tree, and I don't know if you know, Joe, but this is like two trees that are merged into one. They really are truly merged as two beings into one. Like the branches go into each other, and it's amazing. So, and the first thing that I felt when I connected with the tree, with that and brought that molecule, that sense into my mind, it's just this really powerful flow and this just really clear idea that all of these things that appear in our awakening process are manifestations of our belief in separation, and that all of them, without exception, can be healed through connection with the flow, like we were saying. And it was like, I felt like it was very tree like the feeling of the flow in the tree, and it just dissolved the molecule just so easily. And then I felt like we were going into the authentic self of the person, and then, which was really easy to connect with, really like clear for me. And then there was a sense of going into my authentic self, which was actually harder in that circumstance. And that took a while to come through. And then I left the tree and I tuned back in, and that molecule, it was still there. And I realized that the tree was just showing me like how it can be done. But it was the connection in us, like that unconditional love for each other, that was the healing. And we had to go there. And so then I just felt this heart, this just amazing, I mean, it wasn't instant, but this amazing swelling of like that feeling you feel when you just become love. Not become, but you realize that that's what you are. And and then the molecule, I keep calling it the molecule, but this thing, this active agent for harm, just evaporated as if it had never been. It wasn't even the same as with the tree where it was dissolved. It was like it evaporated. Because, and I realized another kind of message was that only we can evaporate it because we created it. You know, it's like, yeah, because it came from our consciousness.
Yes.
So when we heal it, or we, you know, connect with the flow in association with it, then it can just vanish, like literally vanish. And I don't know, I did contact this person and I say, you may need to connect in a similar way, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but you know, this is where we are with this, and it's really, really fascinating. So
really, we are creators with our consciousness.
Yes.
And as much as we can create a blockage to this flow, we can also create this healing which allows us to go back into the flow. I loved it when you said it evaporated like it had never been.
Yes. Yeah.
Very powerful.
Unbelievable, really.